Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of Business Casual. I'm joined today by my mother, Patricia Kienzle, and we are here in Hong Kong. You can see Hong Kong in the background. We're in a different location than our normal studio today. So, welcome, Mom, and why don't you give the audience your introduction?
Well, I am Bob's mom, married to Bob's dad, David, and since I've retired, I am an executive on the board of directors for the Lee Street Community Center.
And for the people watching, most of them are probably in Asia, maybe Europe or Australia. Where is the Lee Street Community Center?
The Lee Street Community Center is in Elaine, Arkansas, which is in the poorest part of the state.
And where is Arkansas?
Arkansas is one of the states in the United States that's pretty much in the middle. A little south, but in the middle.
If I've worked with any of you and I told you I'm from Arkansas, does anyone know anything about Arkansas? Maybe out of 20 people, one hand goes up. So it's not a well-known place. Famous for Bill Clinton, famous for Walmart, and famous for Johnny Cash. All right. So before we get into the history of the nonprofit and the history of Elaine, what do you do in the nonprofit, on the ground or behind the scenes?
Wow. More than I can even get done. I am co-chairman. I write the grants. I actually work with the children, plan the activities, collect the supplies. My co-director is a young black lady who grew up there, and we do all the housekeeping. We hang birdhouses, which you'll hear about later. Stay very, very busy.
All right. So right now it is 2018. 99 years ago, in 1919, what was happening in the United States and also in Elaine?
The soldiers were returning from World War I to a very depressed economy. There were not enough jobs. There was a fear of communism taking over because of other things happening in the world. It was just not a stable place.
Okay, and so what specifically was happening with some of the black soldiers that had returned? Because you told me about this before. They were treated like heroes, like in Europe. People didn't care what skin color they had, but they go back to the American South of 100 years ago. What happened to them?
They were sharecroppers.
And what does that mean? Because a lot of our audience won't know what that means.
After the slaves were freed, the landowners divided up their big land into plots. They'd let a sharecropper, or tenant farmer is another name, live there and farm the land. But the farmers doing the work had to get all of their supplies, family supplies, farming supplies, from the store owned by the landowner. What had happened is that these men were honored and respected. They came home and were expected to go back to just being the same people they were when they left. So the cotton prices were the highest they'd ever been that year, and the landowners were not willing to pay the sharecroppers anymore. A lot of times the sharecroppers would work all year long, and the landowners did not keep written receipts of what the families had bought. So you bring in your cotton and you say, oh, this is great, you've earned $220 this year from your cotton. Let's look at what you owe. Oh, you owe $290. So you're going to have to work another year to try to pay off. So this was a way of keeping them in a kind of form of slavery. Well, they were certainly wiser now that they had been overseas. They decided to form a union. The purpose of the union was to be able to negotiate better pay for their crops. Unfortunately, someone started a rumor that the purpose of the union was to kill the white landowners and take over the land. Never, ever was any evidence found of that.
So, who maybe started that rumor? Is there any evidence of that?
No.
Okay, just lost in history.
Lost in history, and you know how things happened. Somebody could have said something just off the cuff when they were mad at somebody, and we don't know how it started.
Okay.
But it was a very good tool for the white people to use, as you'll find out in a few minutes.
Okay. So we've got the union forming, people are scared, and there's rumors being spread, and so there was some kind of meeting. Some of the union members were meeting in a church. What happened then?
It was not just union members, it was the whole family. They were meeting at a church a little ways north of the town of Elaine. They had heard rumors that there may be some sheriff's department people show up, so they did have guards outside. Sure enough, the sheriff's department showed up, and although supposedly they didn't know who fired the first shot, later evidence showed that the first shot was fired by the sheriff's department. So there was crossfire. Someone from the sheriff's department was killed. They were not able to prove how much shooting went into the building because conveniently the building burned down that night.
And I think it's one thing important for our non-American viewers to know that in this time, there was no more legal slavery. There was sharecropper. There was a form of slavery, but outright slavery was illegal. But in the United States, even to this day, the Bill of Rights gives people the right to assemble, peacefully assemble, have meetings in churches, also to own the Second Amendment to own firearms and guns. So they weren't doing anything illegal. So I think that's an important thing because people say, oh, people were meeting, was that legal? They had guns, was that legal? Yes, that was all legal. So there was no, I guess, probable cause for the sheriff's department to really interfere, much less start firing bullets.
And of course, they said they were there for a different reason. So we don't know.
All right, so firing back and forth.
Okay.
Obviously, some people were killed. What happened next? Because this grew.
Oh boy, it grew.
All right.
Someone from the sheriff's department was killed. You know, there was no great outrage over the black people that were killed, but a sheriff's department person was killed. So this news went out across the country, headlines in newspapers. Black insurrection to kill white people and take over all the property. So these were the days when many people did not believe in equality. Hundreds of men, 500 or more, came from the East. Griff Stockley wrote a book called Blood in Their Eyes, and they came ready to kill, and they did.
So they're actually, if you know anything about the United States, they're the Mississippi River is on the eastern side of Arkansas. So these people coming from the east had to cross one of the biggest rivers in the United States to actually get over there. So there was a pretty what do we call planned effort.
Yeah.
It wasn't just casually they're coming walking over.
No.
They're coming from far.
Yeah, and some of them did come from Arkansas, some from the West. Anyone who believed that the black people did not have rights were willing to come and take part in this. In just a few days, the current number by the Equal Justice Initiative is that 237 people were killed. That probably is still low. All of this happened in a matter of 2 to 3 days. Now, the governor sent in federal troops because they were calling this an insurrection. So black families thought these troops were coming in to put an end to it. There is some evidence, I can't tell you how much, but that some of the federal troops actually participated in the killing.
And you've said before, and there's another YouTube video online where somebody tells this story, and so that's out there if anyone's interested. I don't. We can find the link. We can put it in the comments. But
well, and there will be. I think there are 3 documentaries being made right now, so you will find it in the next year.
Well, and I think when you talk about killings, the story, not the story, but the history is that people were, maybe they were in, a car or something, and they're shooting at anybody who's black. So men, women, and children, entire families.
In the fields.
Yeah, in the fields. So it's not. It wasn't just a focus. There's 5 guys. Let's go after them. It was if your skin color is dark, you're a target now.
Mm-hmm. And they were hiding in the bush, the trees, and so they could just fire randomly, and it didn't matter who they hit.
Mm-hmm. All right. So this happened for 2 or 3 days. The body count we still don't know. And then and you mentioned that currently there are people who don't want this. I guess the grounds really dug up to find out how many bodies are still out there. You said there are some people who don't really want to get into that, but.
Well, and actually our nonprofit is one of those, and
okay.
our nonprofit is 3/4 black members, and we've talked about it. Yes, we want more information, but we don't believe that's what we would want to do.
Okay.
But there are people who do, so that is kind of a conflict as to whether or not we believe bodies should be dug up.
Okay. So before we get into what's happening in the recent history with Elaine, after this 2 or 3 days went by, what was the aftermath of that time? What happened immediately after those 2 or 3 days?
A lot of black people fled. A lot of men were arrested. And in prison, they were working the cotton fields. So once again, they were working for nothing. I think it's worth saying that not all white people wanted this to happen. My thoughts are, just mine, that the town of Elaine was actually taken over. Most of that killing did not happen by people who lived there. There were white people who protected the black people, and even though it's for an economic reason, the white landowners did not want these people killed. Mm-hmm. It was harvest time, and these outsiders were coming in and killing the people who needed to do the work. Now, that's not a good reason, economics, but I personally believe that these outsiders created the problem. That if we had just handled this on a local level, that it would not have been so massive.
Okay. So there were some people arrested, and yes, there were some people put in prison, but what happened in any of the court trials? There were some witnesses and some key lawyers who were involved.
You will hear of the Elaine 12 men who were sentenced to die in the electric chair with trials that lasted only minutes. They may have been assigned a lawyer, but they didn't even see their lawyer before the trial. Outside the courthouse were just throngs of white people begging for these people to be electrocuted. So the trials were totally against what we believe in the United States.
Okay. And tell us about Scipio Jones briefly.
Scipio Jones was born a slave. He was still a baby when the slaves were freed. He wanted to get an education when no one else in his family could get an education. He finally made it with the help of white friends.
We're about to have some visitors, by the way.
I believe we are.
Yeah. I don't know if you can see this on video. They're cleaning the windows now. So
Makes me forget about where I was. Okay. He was determined to keep these men safe because they had done no wrong. And they were being punished kind of just as an example. This is what's going to happen to you. So he worked with white lawyers, took years. Finally, he worked on a case that made it all the way to the Supreme Court, United States Supreme Court. Very interesting, though, the timing of it, he wasn't able to go. So something happened there that kept him from going. But that court case resulted in a redefinition of the 14th Amendment. It now says that all citizens will receive due process of law. So they judged that these men had an unfair trial, and through very interesting details. Eventually, all 12 were released. That's a story in itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it changed the Constitution. So
yeah, so we call that a turning point for civil rights.
Good. All right, so you got involved with the Elaine community about 20 years ago?
20 years ago
So how did that
month.
happen? 20 years ago this month, wow. So how did that happen? What was it like 20 years ago? And then what has been going on in the last 20 years?
I received the Christa McAuliffe Fellowship for the state of Arkansas. My project was to write a parenting program called Pickles for Parents. And when I was a school counselor, I wrote a theme for counseling. Life is like a pickle. Sometimes it's sweet, sometimes it's sour.
I've never heard that ever.
Oh my goodness! You used to have to cut pickle stickers and put them in stacks of 100. Oh, he's done a lot of work with pickles. Anyway, so this program was to coordinate with the counseling program. It was back in the days before cell phones, and I drove across the state by myself, coming from the richest part of the state to the poorest part of the state. I thought I had gone into another country. Few people, buildings closed, buildings falling down on the way. When I got to the town of Elaine, I found out you could walk across the whole town in 10 minutes. It was pretty devastating, but they still had an elementary school and a high school.
Okay.
Things were bad. I thought they were bad, but now I know they weren't so bad. Once the school closed,
when did that happen?
10 years ago, 11
Okay.
years ago now. There were 5 little grocery stores. They all closed. We do have a bank and a post office and a few little things, but no real economy.
So when you say the grocery stores closed, where do people buy food?
Well, there's a One Stop.
Which is just like a small, like 7-Eleven style?
Probably built in the 60s. It's pretty small.
Okay.
Then they have to go 25 miles into a town.
So 40 kilometers to another town to get actual proper groceries.
Proper groceries.
Okay. And is that also where the school is now?
The school is in another town. It's not quite that far away.
Okay.
But the children are on a bus because of the country roads and all the stops. They're on the bus at least an hour. More wasted time for these children. 2 hours a day on a bus. And it changed the town so much. The town is actually physically more segregated than it was. Because the children walked across town to the school, then they'd go downtown after school to one of the little grocery stores, and they'd be with their white friends. And then they would go to the north side of town. Well, now there's no reason for the kids to be together anywhere. You know, they don't come downtown. There's nothing to do downtown. We're working on that, though.
Okay. So, yeah, so what's happening with the Lee Street Community Center? Well, there's a couple of things happening. There's Lee Street Community Center, and then there's also a park. There's lots of projects happening all at once.
The Lee Street Community Center has 3 major priorities. Number 1 being the children. When they get off the bus, there are few, if any, positive activities available. We were donated, we partnered, this is how this happened. Our church in Fayetteville partnered with a black church in Elaine, so that this is a cooperative effort. The community center building was donated, 2-room portable school building. It's right in the middle of the low-income housing. Now, we can't open it very often because we're still trying to find money to hire staff. Our board members work full-time jobs. And Aura, my co-director, has 3 children, 5 and under. But she still will show up there to work with those kids. We're looking to find staffing so that it can be open every day after school. So we have a place the kids can come and they watch for us. I can't drive my car down that side of town. The kids will literally stop my car to know when I'm going to open the center. And then they spread the word, and without even putting a sign up, we can have 30, 40 kids. Not always, but we can if the weather's decent. Well, the kids were painting birdhouses, and we really needed a project that the, 11, 12, 13, rest of the teenagers wanted to do. Found out it was birdhouses. So we looked online and found out there is no Birdhouse Capitol anywhere. At least not on Google. We couldn't find a Birdhouse Capitol.
Well, that's anywhere then. If it's not on Google, it's nowhere. So no capital in terms of any city, any state, or even a country, or even a city in another country.
No,
okay.
We couldn't find it.
Now maybe it's in Finland and it's in the Finnish language or something.
Yeah, and so it didn't make it.
So if anybody watching wants to do a little bit of investigative researching, is any city anywhere in the world claiming that they are the birdhouse capital, or more birdhouses than anywhere else, or more birdhouses per capita, or whatever, let us know.
Yes.
And if anybody has any direct connections with Guinness, let us introduce us to your connections to Guinness.
Hey, if they have any unusual birdhouses that they don't know where to put, they can send them to us.
Send them to the Lee Street Community Center in Elaine, Arkansas. We'll put the links for all of this information in the comments or in the description.
We started the Birdhouse Project in 2013 to brighten the town a little bit and to give the kids something they could feel like they were a part of. At one time we had 900 birdhouses. The weather has destroyed a lot. We are now trying to get into the old stores. Lots of stores, well, they're not open, and many of them have the roofs caving in, which you can look through the front and see. So we are trying to find the people who have the keys to those, build a backdrop, and put in birdhouses. And you just won't believe all the amazing birdhouses we have found. People keep asking to buy them, but if we sell them, we can't replace them. However, we're going to try to build birdhouses that we can sell. It's okay. When we started this in 2013, we were already looking at what was going to happen in 2019. We can't really improve the city because there's no money. The city has no money, but we could brighten it. And so now we're finding people are actually coming to Elaine to see the birdhouses. So when they come to learn about the 1919 history, they'll also go away with something more pleasant.
Okay. Now, we have just about 5 minutes left, and so I want to cover any other projects that you're doing. Also, a little bit about moving forward, not only with some of these documentaries being made, because this is going to be in next year. This is going to be big news. It's a 100-year anniversary is probably the wrong word, because anniversaries are usually good.
Just call it a centennial.
Yeah. So there's been 100 years since this the massacre happened and the riots happened, and what can we expect from that in the next year,
okay.
Because there are some professional productions happening.
Yes.
And then also we want to give you a minute to let us know if people want to get involved, whether that's on the ground or donations. What's that money going to go towards? So,
first of all, you're probably wondering, how was this kept quiet for 100 years? If this had happened in a large city, it would not have been kept quiet. But Elaine is so isolated. The black people were told to go back to work and don't talk about it. The white people obviously didn't want it talked about. But let's move to today's white community. I have found people in the last month who only learned about this in the last 4 months. Just because you've lived in Elaine doesn't mean that you know about this and you're trying to hide it. There are a few of the oldest people who probably really don't want it talked about. What I'm finding with the average white community is that it's difficult. They had nothing to do with this, but suddenly the whole country's looking this way, and it's awkward for them. I'm not going to tell you they're trying to hide it. I think it's just awkward for them. Well, we were the first nonprofit to actually publicly acknowledge that the massacre happened. We built a park. First we bought the old medical clinic because it was in a trust and they practically gave it to us, and we got the lot next door. We received a grant money for Arkansas history and built Turning Point Park. Turning Point Park honors Scipio Jones, as well as 2 white men T.K. Jones and Henry Smitty, they actually participated in the torture and the killing, and then realized they could not live with that knowledge. They went to Scipio Jones and the other lawyers and signed affidavits. What those two men said matched the testimony of the 12 men who were in jail. They should be credited with so much. Now, there were other very helpful people too, but we couldn't go into all of them. Our park has outdoor musical instruments, so it's also a place for the community to have a new activity. We want to have it open 25, 30 hours a week, but we do not have the money. We can't just leave it open. So any donations, financial donations, go to open the community center for the children or to open the park. And cost of living is pretty low there. We only pay $10 an hour. I'm sorry, I wish it were more, but these people are happy to have $10 an hour for a part-time job.
It's more than minimum wage.
It is more than minimum wage.
That's
yes.
what a lot of people are making in a big business.
Yes.
In a big company that has thousands of stores or restaurants. They might only be making less than that.
That's
so
right.
that's good.
Well, we believe that once we can open like if we even got enough money for a year, we think that what we have to offer, because we will do birdhouses and we have some books. In fact, I'm writing a children's book about Scipio Jones. We think we'll have enough that with the visitors, we could become self-sufficient. But we've got to get to that level first where we have everything open on a regular basis. And it's a wonderful park. It's between two very old buildings. We have the original door to a one-room schoolhouse built in 1905. That's our treasure. When you put your hand on that doorknob, you're touching history. Some of the men and women who were killed would have used that doorknob to go into that building. So that's our pride and joy, is the old door.
So what do you think is going to happen next year when these documentaries come out and when there is more media and even people on the ground there just visiting? What's the best outcome, and what is your group working for?
Well, first let me tell you that this county seat is in Helena, and some friends that I've been so fortunate to meet are actually building a memorial in Helena, which, because we're so isolated, that really is a better spot for it. We want to have a place that they can come, have a place to contemplate, but also a place to play musical instruments. And we want to be open. We would like to be open, at least 30 hours a week so people could come in.
Okay. And if somebody did give a donation, because we have people from around the world, if somebody was to give $10, what does that go towards? What does that actually do on the ground there?
$10 would either open the community center for 1 hour, or it would open the park for 1 hour. Our goal is to get enough donations so that we have both places open. Then we think we could become self-sufficient, because we think the visitors would donate, the visitors would purchase a birdhouse. We're going to make these cute little caps I won't tell you about now, ball caps with designs on them. We think we could do it if we could ever get enough money. We also need hands. These birdhouses that are hung outside need to be repainted and cleaned out. The ones inside are very, very dusty. We need people who will sit with one kid and paint a birdhouse till they can learn how to paint a little better. We need mentors for lots of things. We could keep a lot of people busy.
All right. So if you're in the Arkansas area or even over there across the Mississippi River and you're just hanging out and said, I don't have anything to do, get a hold of my mom in the Lee Street Community Center. And is there any final words you'd like to say to the viewers?
Well, I am just so taken unexpectedly with all of this. I had been going to Elaine for 7 years before I even heard about it. And now I'm making contact with Black history professors and people all over the state. In fact, I got to be in a meeting with 9 of the people who walked into Central High School 60 years ago. So this is leading to a lot of new experiences.
And if you are unfamiliar with that history,
Another one.
Central High School in Little Rock, where they had, when they finally had integration with black and white students, where the black students could finally go to the regular schools with white students, and that was a big to-do.
Oh my goodness!
And the National Guard was there and yeah. So
finally the president had to order that they be allowed in.
Yes, we don't have time to tell that story right now, but it's online. That one's more well known.
Very well known
than the 1919 Elaine issues. So we're going to put the Lee Street Community Center's information in the description on this video. If you have any questions or comments, please put them in the comments, and we will be happy to reply. Our company has our nonprofit division, The Giving Speech. We work with nonprofits around Asia and apparently now in the United States. But we offer pro bono free training to qualified nonprofits. So if you're in a nonprofit or you have a nonprofit to recommend, get a hold of us and we would love to work with you and give you some communication training so your staff, volunteers, administration are more I can't even speak now, more effective and more efficient in your communications internally and externally with fundraisers or other business people. So I hope you've enjoyed this brief glimpse into history and the Lee Street Community Center. Thank you for being here, Mom.
Oh, it's wonderful to be here.
All right. See you again.